Hello, this presentation will be about the caste system in ancient India, the introduction. So, the caste system, while there is no exact date of when it was created, it is believed to have originated around 2,000 years ago. It has tribal roots and roots in the Vedic culture. It is a traditional social hierarchy in India and many other places, but we're mainly focusing on India. There are four main varnas. It's the social groups that people were divided into: the Brahmins, that were priests and scholars; the Kshatriyas were the warriors and rulers; Vaishyas were the merchants and landowners; and the Sudras were laborers and service workers. We have a fifth group, the Untouchables, that were believed to be lower, the lowest of the low. They were even placed outside the Varna system and faced severe discrimination, even now in modern days. We will get more into that as the presentation goes on. People were expected to follow the duties of their caste, and the caste system influences a lot of daily life, religious practices, even if they're not Hindu. Although it's officially outlawed in modern India, a lot of discrimination on caste still exists in many India today. We will be starting with the role of Brahmin and going down the list. So the list goes from the Brahmins to the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, and the Untouchables as well.
Brahmins have played a central role in Hindu society for thousands of years, traditionally seen as the priestly caste. Their responsibilities have long revolved around religious duties, teaching, and spiritual leadership. They were the ones conducting rituals, leading ceremonies, and helping communities stay connected to spiritual practices. From as early as 1500 BCE, when the Vedas, Hinduism's oldest scriptures, were composed, Brahmins were the key figures who memorized, recited, and preserved these sacred texts. Their ability to carry forward these oral traditions with great accuracy helped lay the foundation for Hindu religious life. The connection to the Vedas, especially texts like the Rig Veda, composed between 1500 and 1200 BCE, made them not just religious speakers, but also cultural and intellectual leaders. The knowledge of the scriptures positioned them as gurus and spiritual guides, influencing everything from philosophy and rituals to values and education across generations. Brahmins weren't just religious authorities, they helped define what it meant to live a spiritual, meaningful life in Hindu tradition. The connection to the Vedas, especially texts like the Rig Veda, composed between 1500 and 1200 BCE, made them not just religious speakers, but also cultural and intellectual leaders. The knowledge of the scriptures positioned them as gurus and spiritual guides, influencing everything from philosophy and rituals to values and education across generations. Brahmins weren't just religious authorities, they helped define what it meant to live a spiritual, meaningful life in Hindu tradition. Over time, however, their position came with perceived privilege. Historical texts like the Manusmriti, written around 1200 BCE, codified social hierarchies that often placed Brahmins at the top. These rules gave them certain legal and social advantages that lasted for centuries. Even today, Brahmins are often seen as socially privileged groups, partly because of traditionally higher education levels and access to resources. But this only tells half the story. While some Brahmins continue to benefit from these historical privileges, the reality is more complex in modern India. The caste system has been widely challenged and criticized, and Brahmins, like others, navigating the pressures of a society that's trying to move beyond caste-based identity. They face their own set of challenges in their evolving landscape, including dealing with stigma, assumptions, and the ongoing tension between tradition and modern values. At the same time, Brahmins have shown significant adaptability. No longer confined into religious roles, they moved into a wide range of professions: education, medicine, technology, business, and beyond. You'll find Brahmin entrepreneurs building startups, scholars shaping universities, and professionals contributing to industries around the world. The professional and diversification reflects not just social change, but the community's capacity to evolve and find relevance in a modern context. In conclusion, the community of the Brahmins is constantly changing. From ancient text readers to active participants, they've helped shape Indian societies in profound ways. While they carry the legacy of spiritual leadership and cultural influence, they also face the need to adapt to a world where caste dynamics are shifting. Their journey reflects a broader human story of tradition meeting transformation and of identity being constantly redefined over time.
The second class, or the second highest status of the four Varnas, known as the Kshatriyas, they're traditionally the military and the ruling class. They're responsible for protection of the political cosmic order, also known as Dharma. They achieved their position through their merits of aptitude and conduct and with nature, in between 15,000 and 1000 BCE. They did not have, any social roles given to them based on economic factors, but citizens were classified according to their Varna or castes. According to Hindu mythology, the origins of the class can be explained by a lot of different theories. One of the really big popular ones is that when the Hindu god Brahma was involved in the job of procreation due to toil and perspiration, a lot of negative energy came from him and and made devils. He asked the Lord Vishnu to kill them, and then Lord Vishnu told Brahma to create protectors of humanity because of the devils. And it is said that he created the four of them from different parts of the day: Brahmins at dawn, Kshatriyas at noon, Vaishyas at dusk, and Shudras at night. And it also kind of involves another story, how it came from Brahma's body, the head being the Brahmins, the arms being the Kshatriyas, the thighs being the Vaishyas, and the feet being the Shudras. Now, in early India, people would be able to move between their Varnas by learning new skills or changing their jobs, talking to new people. When they still had nomadic tribes, the strongest would be the Kshatriyas and whoever would protect the tribe. Now in modern India, many are born into the roles. Society keeps people in those roles. But during the Epic Age, which is from the early to mid 20th century, in addition, the Kshatriyas were part of the twice born group. So that basically makes them above the Shudras and the Untouchables. And adding a nice fact, Kshatriya women were not shunned. They were treated very nicely. They would be taught warfare. They wouldn't be barred from it. All Kshatriyas would be sent to a Brahm's ashram to acquire the knowledge that they need. Their fundamental duty was just to protect their territory and defend against attacks. Kshatriya people were allowed to get married to anyone of all the Varnas.
The Vaishya caste system. The Vaishya caste is made up of mainly merchants, landowners, and traders, often acted as the economical backbone of the Indian society as it evolved. Much like higher castes, the Vaishyas also believe in life, death, and rebirth as the way of determining what caste you will fall into. The duties of the Vaishya caste are to engage in cattle rearing, agriculture, and trade, to accumulate wealth, but also they are expected to be charitable and support the society by donations, observing the Vedic rituals, and making donations to the Brahmins are other ways that they are other duties that they have. Some fun facts are Mahatma Gandhi was born into a Vaishya family. While the Vaishyas are wealthy, they still rank below the Brahmins, and during ancient Indian and religious times. During the colonial era of India, the Vaishyas were under British rule. In modern-day India, Vaishyas dominate business, finance, and commerce. Vaishyas during the Maurya Empire, circa 322 to 185 BCE. It was a time of economic prosperity and trade expansion. The Vaishyas played a crucial role in inland and maritime trade, banking and finance, and supporting urbanization. Vaishyas during the medieval period, circa 8th to 18th century CE. During Islamic rule, the Vaishyas continued to be wealthy merchants and financiers. Many became bankers or seths, zamindars, and handled state revenues. They maintained cultural identity while adapting to new regimes. Many members of the subgroups, Jains and Vaishnavas, became patrons of religion and art. The Vaishyas' role in society. The Vaishyas played a key role as they were the merchants and the traders. They handled international trade and commerce of the society. They controlled the money lending and formed ancient financial establishments or banks. They were also agriculturalists and landowners, owned land and livestock, and they became wealthy off the agriculture. The Vaishya subgroups. The Marwaris, or Rajasthan, were business and trade. The Agrawals in North India were merchants and finance. The Chettiaris in Tamil Nadu were banking and money lending. And the Komatis in Andhra were commerce and retail. The Patels were agriculture and trade. And then some subgroups in this caste engaged in skilled craftsmanship such as pottery and masonry.
Today, I'll be talking about the caste system in ancient India with a specific focus on the roles of the Shudras and the Dalits. We'll explore how ancient Hindu texts like the Rig Veda, the Upanishads, and the laws of Manu helped shape and solidify this deeply entrenched social hierarchy and how it evolved over time from symbolic origins to a rigid exclusionary structure. Let's begin with the Shudras, the fourth group in the traditional Varna system. The Shudras were historically assigned to serve the three higher castes. Their roles were manual laborers, cleaners, artisans, and servants, essential to the functioning society, yet viewed as inherently lower in class and status. Unlike the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, Shudras were not considered twice born. This term refers to a symbolic spiritual rebirth through Vedic education and initiation. Because they were not twice born, Shudras were excluded from learning the sacred texts and performing key religious rituals. They were denied access to education, religious rites, and had very few legal or social rights. One of the earliest references to the caste system appears in the Rig Veda, specifically in the hymn of Purusha. This hymn describes the universe being created from the dismembered body of a cosmic being, Purusha. Each caste is said to have originated from a part of his body. The Brahmins from the mouth, the Kshatriyas from the arms, and the Vaishyas from the thighs, and the Shudras from the feet. This metaphor symbolically positions the Shudras at the very bottom, important but subordinate. While this idea may have initially served as a metaphorical or spiritual purpose, it laid the groundwork for what would later become a much more rigid and legally enforced system. Moving forward in time, the Upanishads, written between 800 and 500 BCE, shift the focus from ritual to personal spiritual liberation, or moksha. These texts explore profound philosophical questions and emphasize inner knowledge over social status. At first glance, this might seem like a challenge to caste hierarchies. However, caste boundaries still remain strong in these texts. In the Chandogya Upanishad, for instance, there's a passage where a Brahmin teacher tests whether a boy of uncertain background could be Brahmin. The teacher accepts the boy because he speaks the truth, but he still explicitly says, "You are not Shudra," reinforcing the belief that Shudras lack the moral or intellectual capacity for spiritual study. So even though the Upanishads promote inner spiritual equality, access to learning and spiritual progress remains limited to the upper castes. Shudras are once again excluded, not out of overt hatred, but because of deeply held assumptions about their place in society. Now let's turn to the Laws of Manu, or the Manusmriti, written between 200 BCE and 200 CE. This text marks a turning point. Unlike the early, more symbolic descriptions of caste, the Manusmriti lays out detailed laws that codify caste into a rigid legal framework. It explicitly defines the role of the Shudra as one of servitude. One occupation only the Lord prescribed to the Shudra to serve meekly the three other castes. It also states that a Brahmin may certainly take possession of the property of a Shudra, but nothing belongs to the Shudra as his own. These rules didn't just reflect society, they actively shaped it, making caste boundaries more difficult to cross and inequality more permanent. And now, as we move to those who were entirely excluded from the Varna system, the Dalits, historically known as untouchables. Dalits performed the most stigmatized labor, handling waste, disposing of the dead, working with leather and animal remains. These jobs, while vital to public health and sanitation, were considered polluting by the higher caste. Dalits were forced to live outside villages, use discarded utensils, and were banned from temples, schools, and wells. In the Manusmriti, their role is brutally clear. It says the dwelling of Chandalas and Vapakas shall be outside the village. They must use discarded bowls, wear garments of the dead, and live by wandering from place to place. Contact with a Dalit was believed to cast ritual impurity. Even speaking to a Dalit could be seen as spiritually contaminating for a Brahmin. In these texts, Dalits go from being invisible to being actively defined and excluded. While they existed on the margins from the start, it was through the texts like the Manusmriti that their exclusion became institutionalized. Over time, the system became not just spiritual or cultural, but political and economic. The caste system helped ensure social stability, but at a terrible human cost. As urbanization and political centralization increased, so did the need for order and control. And the texts like the Manusmriti gave religious and moral justification for deeply unequal treatment of entire groups of people. This evolution from the symbolic body of Purusha to philosophical exclusion in the Upanishads to codified legal apartheid in the Laws of Manu mirrors broader changes in Indian society. Early Vedic communities were more tribal and fluid, but as societies grew more complex, the need for hierarchy and control intensified. Caste became a system not just of belief, but of power. Even today, the legacy of these texts lingers. Modern India has made huge strides in equality, but caste-based discrimination still exists in education, in politics, and in daily life. Understanding the roots of the system helps us see how deeply ideology can shape society. So in conclusion, yes, the caste system became more rigid over time. And yes, religious texts were increasingly used to justify this rigidity. The Shudras were subordinate. The Dalits were excluded. And while these roles were spiritual in origin, they became legal and political tools for control. Thank you.
And the legacy of the caste system, while it continues to impact social structures in contemporary India, there has been a lot of progress made towards equality. The caste systems were outlawed, even though it has a historical context. There's a lot of people that still follow it, even though they're not Hindu. For example, many Christian churches don't allow anyone like the Dalits to enter their churches, even only letting Brahmins in. In the future, there should be more understanding of what went on and promote inclusivity. Our final thoughts are, as society evolves, it'll be important for everyone to reflect on the implications of the caste system. And hopefully we can all create a better and more inclusive future for all the individuals, regardless of caste. Thank you.